Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have Delegate Highland Buddy Fowler. I love that name. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Woody. Thank you. Highland is a very old family name that goes back about 800 years in our family, but if I had Highland on the ballot in Hanover County, I mean, nobody would know who that is, so I make sure I have Buddy on there.
Great. Now, you've been around here for quite a while because you were a staff to a former member. We were just having a discussion about him.
Well, I had the privilege of actually working for, I think, truly a great individual, actually two great individuals, Delegate John Cox, and then prior to him, Delegate Frank Hargrove, who was down here for 28 years. And again, I didn't work all of that. When I sold my business, Frank kind of persuaded me, I guess we'll say, to come down here and help him out with some stuff. And just one thing led to the other. You know, this wasn't on my bucket list, but those are two truly fine individuals. And if I can ever even come close to what they were able to do, I will put it in the win column.
Great. And this is a very significant year. I believe it's the 400th year of the initiation of the General Assembly, or the House of Burgesses, whatever it was called back then.
Yeah, the House of Burgesses, 1619, 2019, 400 years. You know, as a former person who studied history my entire life, including in college, it's obviously very significant. A year, an anniversary for the General Assembly. We're the oldest legislative body in the Western Hemisphere, and I think you know, and more importantly, at least from my perspective, when we talk about the some of the leaders of Virginia and our country that came before us, I mean, it's at least it's never far from my mind when I walk into that chamber. When you know, I have the privilege of sitting in Patrick Henry's seat in the legislature, so you know, there's no pressure there. But you know, it's when you're from Hanover County, that obviously means a lot. And but you know, with George Mason, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, you know, George Wythe, John Marshall. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of the leaders that helped not just Virginia, but to establish our nation. Based on the principles of freedom and you know, so I think it's very big.
And I take it the concept of a citizen legislator still survives today, although things are much more complex and the days are even longer.
It's a challenge for us to come down. This year's a short session, which is 46 days, I believe, is what the Constitution lays out, and so we get a lot done in a short amount of time. Again, I think a citizen legislature, I think, is really the model, obviously, that our forefathers envisioned. But again, I think it's important for us to live and work among the people we represent. And so I sometimes wonder, you know, what Congress would be like if it was still a citizen legislature, maybe. But I think we've served the Commonwealth well for 400 years. Yeah.
And that brings to mind, I believe, an initiative that both you and Delegate Chris Peace have regarding calling for a constitutional convention that would require the federal government to do a number of things, including balancing its budget?
Well, again, I've been a supporter of the Convention of States for, well, I think really maybe perhaps since I first got down here. Again, in the United States Constitution, our founding fathers, you know, I think it's in Article 5, I believe, that sets out 2 ways to amend the United States federal Constitution. One is by an act of Congress, which requires 2/3 a majority in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then it goes to the states where 3/4 of the states have to ratify a proposed amendment. But there's also what we call an Article 5 Convention of the States, where I believe it's 2/3 of the states can agree to assemble and also propose amendments to go to the states for ratification. So again, I think some people think of this as some kind of an extra legal type of a proposal, but it's not. It's actually in the U.S. Constitution. I think there's a growing concern among citizens in the states that perhaps Congress has moved beyond the point where it can reform itself, and perhaps the states need to step in and offer some maybe some solutions. I think it's important to remember that it was the states initially that created the federal government. So again, so I don't really have any problem with the states again stepping in and maybe offering some ideas.
Well, let's focus a little bit on some of the committees you serve on. You serve on privileges and elections. I think that's the longest standing, oldest.
It's the oldest committee, yes, sir.
Right, and you're also on finances. We'll talk a little bit about taxes later, but the other one that you serve on is called General Laws. And I take it that's where everything goes that people don't know where to put otherwise.
Well, you're right. Well, General Laws is kind of a catch-all for where something may not fit in another particular basket. But we also do have a wide range of responsibilities, such as all the state procurement laws goes through General Laws. The Virginia ABC laws,
alcoholic beverage control,
all of the licensure legislation. The department we call it DPOR. All that goes there. All the real estate. Apartments, condominiums, real estate law, all that goes through general law. So it's a very busy committee, yes, sir.
And you're chairman of what's called Subcommittee Number 1, I believe.
Subcommittee 1. So I don't know if that makes us the most important or not, but anyway, but it's very busy.
Yeah, there have been some interesting items that have gone through there recently. I noticed we were talking earlier about the training requirements to become a barber or a cosmologist. And I know that's something that your subcommittee addressed recently. Yeah,
well, so I think we've had I think right now currently the requirements, I believe for a barber to be licensed is, I believe it's 1,100 hours of training, which I think it's been reduced from what it was. But we also had a bill dealing with hairstylists and hairdressers, which I think actually require 1,500 hours of training. And so we had one bill which didn't come out of our committee, which was going to move that down to 1,000 hours. And so, but I believe there's a bill coming over from the Senate that will be taken up pretty soon, where I'm hoping we can have some kind of a compromise, and to maybe, I think seems to me that the hairstylists probably ought to kind of be equal to the barbers in respect to their training. But I think there's one thing that government sometimes tends to do, which is perhaps maybe overregulate in some areas. So, and perhaps this is one of them, but we'll see how it works out.
What about game and fish? I believe
game and fish. Well, again, Woody, I've been ever since I was a little boy. All I've ever really wanted to do was fish. But I'm also a hunter, and so I've over the years I've developed a pretty good relationship with the Department of Game and Fisheries. So I'm always happy to carry or patron, legislation for the department to, help improve hunter access or fishing opportunities and things like that. So, yeah, absolutely.
There was another interesting item which would allow the state of Virginia to have electric charging stations in state parks, for example.
Well, that's great. Again, that's something that it comes through General Laws Committee. We talked about that, but I think we passed or allowed basically the state parks, I think in last session, to be able to provide for charging stations, which again, these are the person with an electric car would pay, to use the charging thing. So it's like a little franchise. So it doesn't really cost the taxpayer money. It just it's at the facility. But now there's a bill which would allow different state agencies to also provide that that service for folks that are having electric cars. So again, this is a growing part of the automobile industry, and so and so I just think it's a service that's going to grow over time. But again, it's important to know that these are just allowing them to be put on these properties. They're not really, they're not run by the state. It's not gonna, be a burden on the taxpayer.
And I also noticed something about school and campus safety threat assessments, something that probably came out of that school safety committee.
Well, again, the school safety committee, and I wish I could remember exactly, but it came out with a number of recommendations with respect to school security officers, different threat assessments, and it even drilled all the way down into how schools are designed, and things like that. So there's lots of different proposals, and again, all this was done over the summer, I guess, and into the fall, with a lot of input from the local governments and local school divisions, to address, a real problem. So I think, and we may pass some good legislation, and I'm sure the governor will obviously sign them and perhaps maybe offer some amendments. But I believe we're on the right track there, and the input we received back from local governments and things has been positive on that.
Now you've got a pretty large district. As I recall, it's about 600 square miles. You've got parts of Hanover, Caroline, and Spotsylvania. You've got industrial. You've got retail, but you also have a lot of farm and forestry, and then you also have some tourism in Lake Anna, that area.
Absolutely.
So talk to us about your district.
Well, when you think about it, Woody, I think my district probably demographically and geographically is probably a lot like Virginia. I have, although I don't really have an urban area, but I have a very kind of high density suburban area, with the town of Ashland and the area around Atlee-Elmont, where Atlee High School and those very dense, subdivisions, with a lot of people per acre. Then I get out in north of there and west of Ashland to an area which is very rural, agriculture and timber. Dominates those areas, but with the I-95 corridor and Route 1 and 301, we have a lot of, commercial and industrial and retail development. And so I think, my district is blessed to have, a vibrant business, and community, which obviously really helps diversify our tax base, and so it's I'm very blessed. I mean, I think I have the best district in the Commonwealth of Virginia, with great citizens, that work hard, and so it's but it's very diverse. I mean, a lot of their districts are either all urban or all, or some suburban or rural, and I got kind of a little bit of everything.
Now, your portion of Spotsylvania is in the Partlow area, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I take it there are a lot of there's a lot of folks who retire out there now, I believe. out by the lake, and I take it though there's some tourism out there because of the recreation.
Well, we've got the Lake Anna State Park, the Lake Anna Winery is out there, which is the very western end of my district. But just kind of a little joke, I kind of call that the Spotsylvania Gold Coast. Is in my district, see, with Lake Anna. But those folks out there have been very good to me. I've made a lot of friends out in Spotsylvania, but once you move away from the lake to the Partlow area and Blades Corner and all, again, it's a lot like Western Hanover. It's very rural, but we do have a lot of retired folks on Lake Anna, and Lake Anna is a great place to come and visit and and engage in the water sports. And of course, my favorite water sport obviously is fishing. But so sometimes we have to watch out for those jet skis and the water skiers and stuff. But it's actually a very popular place. And I think Lake Anna State Park, I believe the number 2 among the state park system with respect to the visitors.
It's interesting because the other thing that's out there by Lake Anna is one of the nuclear generating facilities, as I recall. Yeah. Yeah.
So the Dominion Power. I'm showing my age. I still sometimes slip up and call it VEPCO, but it's Dominion Power,
right.
and they've been operating. Actually, they started building that facility when I believe I was in probably junior high school. And but again, it's a big part of obviously Dominion Power's generating capacity, and so they have the 2 reactors out there. I've had the opportunity to tour those one time with their Boy Scout troop in Ashland, and was absolutely amazed at the facility. But they seem to coexist very well with the surrounding community and the citizens that live there. So, but I tell you, there's a lot of people in my district also work there. So, again, I want to thank on behalf of them, and I want to thank Dominion Power for those good paying jobs out there.
Well, I think Rappahannock Electric Co-op also is in your district, part of your district.
Actually, I think most of my district is probably serviced by Rappahannock Electric Co-op, and that's a great organization and great people. I tell you, every person I've met from the top all the way down to the linemen are just first-class people with the co-op. I think of all the years I've been down there, I don't recall of ever a single complaint from a citizen about the co-op. So I think they do a great job of taking care of their members, and again, also, I think provide nice low-cost energy, which is somebody that uses electricity. Right. I greatly appreciate that.
I'm trying to remember, there's a small college in Ashland.
Well, again, because when you're the center of the universe, Woody, yes. Nothing is small. Okay, but yes, but Randolph-Macon, I believe, is celebrating. Right. I believe it's 150th anniversary in Ashland. Of course, the college precedes that, obviously. But it actually has a big footprint in the town, and it's been a great citizen in the town, and obviously they do lots of activities and things for citizens to participate in out there. They've always been very generous with their facilities, and but there's also been a lot of renovation and construction out there on campus. It's an absolutely beautiful campus, and I'm very proud to have Randolph-Macon in the 55th House District. Yeah,
there are a lot of really nice, neat retail establishments that have grown up around there. As a matter of fact, isn't there a trolley that goes up and down that main thoroughfare?
Now, I'm not sure about it. There may be one that comes around occasionally. We have big events. We have the trolley, but absolutely, there's a lot of foot traffic now in the town of Ashland. With the various restaurants and other activities with the college. We just obviously reopened the old Ashland Theater. So, and actually in response to that, the town asked me to put in a bill to allow them to join other localities to have pedestrian crosswalks with signalization on it to make pedestrian traffic a little more friendly. And so yeah, it's a lot going on in the town of Ashland, and I have several restaurants there I like to to go to, my wife and I and friends, and so yeah, it's so please come on up there, and we'll be glad to treat you to a barbecue or something.
Sounds good to me. Now, how do the counties cooperate, especially since the Go Virginia initiative has been implemented?
Well, I'm not aware of any of our counties. I'd have to talk to the Hanover County, the economic development folks, if we've had any actual projects with involving that Go Virginia legislation that we have that was passed here. I was going to say 2 or 3 years ago. But as far as the town of Ashland in Hanover County, though, I think the town and the county works extremely well together on issues of mutual interest. I know the Ashland Police and the Hanover Sheriff's Department work extremely well together, and I know the Town Council and the Board of Supervisors as well works together, I think, very well on issues of mutual importance and things. So yeah, there's never really been any problems there.
Now, what about transportation funding? You mentioned Route 1, 301, and I-95. Have there been any projects recently identified through the SMART scale criteria for improvements? Well,
SMART scale has been a little bit of a challenge for us in Central Virginia. I think it's obviously great legislation because it sets up a criteria where projects are rated, and then the projects that are rated the highest, will get funding and move forward. So we've had a few projects on the SMART scale. I know, but I wish I had County Michael Flagg with me, could exactly tell me which ones. But one of the problems that we have found with SMART scale, though, is the 2 areas that had special tax, considerations in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. They're able to tax themselves for transportation. So what's happened is, since they can come to the table with a little bit more funding than we can in Central Virginia, a lot of their projects get kind of moved up to the head of the class, you could say. And so it's made it a little bit of a challenge for us to compete on projects that we obviously believe are important, and that we need to make improvements so we can move people and commerce. And so that's a little bit of a challenge for Central Virginia to try to to make sure that our projects are able to to score better with the SMART scale. But that being said, Hanover has particularly on the 95 corridor, we've in the last number of years, we've completely redone the Atlee-Elmont interchange. We've just recently finished the Lewistown Road interchange, and of course the one in Ashland. So we've made some significant progress.
Speaking of the head of the class, in a different way, there's going to be a raise for school teachers in local school districts, assuming everything works out as planned. And of course, part of the burden rests with local school districts in terms of a match. How are your school districts going to be impacted by that, if you know?
Well, again, the state, the House budget, which we're going to vote it out tomorrow, and I believe the House budget has a 5% increase for school teachers. Now, I believe the 3% of that has to be a match by the local government. So, been able to to pull down all 5%. So that's the way we set it up. So again, it's education is a combination of obviously local and state support, and so. But I think the House delegates stepped up and and if we've offering a 5% pay increase for our public school teachers, and again I basically visited, I believe, just about every school in my district, and I mean, and then again we have great schools and in Hanover, Carolina, and Spotsylvania, and as well as across the state. But I'm obviously very proud of the effort that our teachers put in. It's not an easy job, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I could do it. So again, I'm just happy that we were able to to give them that increase. And
of course, they should have more support in terms of counselors, nurses, and school psychologists as a result of some of the funding in the budget.
A big part of our school safety, and security proposals, and actually a big part of that involves the counselors in the schools. We found that in maybe not every school division, but sometimes school counselors are involved in a lot of other activities as opposed to focus on counseling. And so obviously when you're doing a threat assessment, the counselors work with the kids, know the kids. So I think one of the obviously goals of school security is to identify potential problems and then provide counseling and assistance for students and all before something really bad happens. So that's a big part of that. With respect to mandates for counselors, though, and even teachers or administrative staff, I'm always very kind of hesitant to, because of the diversity, in the state. A county where I live in Hanover, which is, I think, considered to be somewhat affluent, it's maybe a little bit easier for us to fund certain positions as opposed to counties in our rural areas. So again, I think, as somebody that has responsibility statewide, I think we need to be careful about, issuing, mandates from Richmond.
Sure.
I think we need to try to make sure that we give their school divisions the flexibility, and the tools that they need to get, the schools to work for them.
We got about a minute left, but I want to know when I will be able to get my tax refund from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Well, I tell you, I've had a lot of friends of mine are CPAs, so I've been getting emails, but one of the things that I do on the Finance Committee is we do a tax conformity bill, which we actually passed out of the House the other day. Obviously, we need to get the governor to sign it. We usually we pass that bill with an emergency clause on it, but we need 80 votes for that, and we couldn't get. Some of my friends on the other side of the aisle didn't want to do an emergency clause because of some of the other enactment clauses we had in the bill, which was trying to preserve some of that tax windfall that was coming down from Washington. We thought it was a good idea to try to stick that money kind of in the piggy bank rather than spend it all in this particular state budget. And so we have some difference of opinion on that. So, but we did pass out a conformity bill and all that. So that's, but this is I'm sorry to say this was the longest it ever took us to get that tax conformity bill out. But help is coming.
Great. Well, thank you for being here, Delegate Buddy Fowler. Good to see you.
Thank you, Woody.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.